Thank you for joining this webinar. We really appreciate your time and we appreciate you being here. And as the title says, our topic is Blackbird and A+E Networks, ultra-efficient cloud video native workflows for the new world. I'm going to give you a bit of an introduction of Blackbird, the company, and what kind of workflows we actually do and how the system is architected. First, an introduction. I'm Jeff Krebs. I'm VP of Product and a recovering editor. And what this really means is that I work very closely with customers and our R&D team and bridge the two, especially with the editor. And we are thrilled to have the real stars of our webinar. And that is Ed Russo, SVP of Production Operations, Kevin Tobin, Senior Director of Production Operations, and Cassie Pasenka, New Media Asset Specialist. We're going to give you a little bit more detail on their background in a few minutes. But first, for those who have not seen Blackbird before, Blackbird is a cloud-based video editing platform. And what this means is that we enable our customers to access, manipulate, and deliver their media in a web browser. This can be file-based content or live stream content. Now, the original high bitrate media or the mezzanine can be on-premise or in the cloud. It really doesn't matter to us where that media sits. Our process, though, is not to move that high bitrate media. We leave it where it is. From that media, we rapidly make a high-quality proxy of it. That proxy is called the Blackbird Codec, and that is the item that is rapidly moved to our secure cloud. And we'll discuss the complete process of that in just a minute. The result is that Blackbird gives you a portal to access our editor, the video, audio, and metadata through a web browser to do functions such as simple clipping and sequencing for fast turnaround content, such as live events, as well logging and metadata enrichment tools, which you will see today, all the way through to a full-featured, real-time, non-destructed, multi-track, non-linear editor that runs entirely in a web browser. And then, of course, we could publish or make multi-point publishes directly to a variety of distribution points, such as social media, high-quality publishing that can go to OTT and digital services, right through to traditional broadcast. So, Blackbird. It's been used for quite a long period of time. The history of the company was originally with traditional broadcast post-production market, and Blackbird still is used pretty much in every traditional post-production facility in Soho and Manchester, and making quite a presence in New York and Los Angeles. Production companies are also using Blackbird with the likes of BBC and ITV and most of the major production companies in the market. And of course, A+E Networks, which is why we're all here today. And we're also used by companies, as you can see on this list, such as Delta Tray, MSG Networks, IMG, for very high-end sports content like NFL through European Game Pass, European Tour Golf, and the list goes on. We're also used directly by leagues such as the National Rugby League and clubs such as Arsenal, New York Rangers, Buffalo Sabres, and others. As for news, more than 50 new regional news stations in the US market through partners such as Town News, as well as a major, well-known international media news network. On the partner side, we have a growing integration list of companies like EditShare, LiveView, EVS, and others. The three tenets that we work on, and you can see them listed here: fast, flexible, and resilient. So what does this mean? Well, fast, turning around content very, very quickly and getting people access to that content as well. And of course, flexible, having anyone in your business creating this content, not just the chosen few, and giving everyone secure access from anywhere. And working, of course, if you think about the back end of your infrastructure, allowing you to flex and change with flexibility on the back end as well. And of course, resilience. And we can't go on without talking about resilience, ever-changing landscape to working from home. Resilience is paramount. We're going to talk a little bit about the codec now. I'm just going to pull up a web page And there it is. So what is it with this Blackbird codec that we mentioned? Well, first of all, you can try this codec if you want on your own. You can go to blackbird.video, go to solutions. But what you'll notice is that here we have it hosted in a web page. You'll notice I can scrub forwards and backwards with no latency, no buffering whatsoever. Every frame is accounted for on this Blackbird video. So it's interesting when you zoom in, you can see every frame, but when you zoom out, it gives you context to what the content and how the content is made up. And you could, of course, play forwards and play backwards, which is very unique to be able to play in both directions, something that's very, very unique to us. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we deploy Blackbird, what the architecture looks like. Well, we have a software application called the Blackbird Edge, and this gets deployed onto your infrastructure. The Blackbird Edge is going to receive files wherever they're sitting on your storage infrastructure. It will also receive the live streams. The main thing is don't change your infrastructure. The Blackbird Edge slips and fits neatly into it. The Edge can take many form factors. As you can see, we can be an on-premise server or servers, a virtual machine hosted in your own data centers, or we could host it in public clouds such as AWS, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, and wherever your media sits, we're going to access it. Now that can be live streams, baseband SDI, HLS, growing MXF files. In terms of file-based content, we pretty much work with any standard file format. As soon as the Blackbird Edge receives a live stream, it's going to proxy and transcode very much like what you saw on that web page. Now that goes to the cloud, and that is what the users are going to access. Now, you need to understand that users are not connecting to your infrastructure at all. They're not connecting to your source media. They're using the Blackbird cloud, accessing the editor and manipulating the Blackbird codec, which will provide them with a high level of frame accurate editing capabilities in your web interface. This means that you could have hundreds or thousands of users accessing and collaborating and editing on the content with no infrastructure requirement. All they require is a simple laptop, no special internet. We could work with internet as low as 2 megabits per second. So home internet is fine for really efficient browser-based editing. And when it comes to delivery, we handshake against the high bit rate. You can see we can deliver to social, we can deliver to cloud storage, we can deliver to your CDN, we can deliver to your local storage. We can do multi-point deliveries as well as metadata deliveries through binaries such as AAF and XML to push down that data to the next process in line. With that, I'm going to play a video that will tell you a little bit more about A&E and how they used Blackbird during the pandemic. In the first 2 months of 2020, A&E's Creative Teams initiative was status quo for all media services. But in March of 2020, as the pandemic hit, everything changed.
No entry to any facility will be permitted after Monday, March 17th. It was within those 3 working days that all of the post-production operations across the 3 facilities, New York City, Stamford, Connecticut, and Los Angeles, needed a solution, and fast. The solution we turned to was already available to the entire company via a modest internet connection and a browser, Blackbird. And it wasn't until staff were home that many realized they had taken the office Wi-Fi for granted. Luckily, Blackbird can perform with as little as an LTE 4G hotspot, of which some had to rely on.
A&E and Blackbird engineered and implemented a sophisticated cloud video hub. At its core, Blackbird enables anyone with network access, even with dramatically limited home network speeds, the ability to frame accurately access, view, navigate, edit, and deliver video, audio, and metadata in any web browser from the Blackbird cloud. This is all done untethered from A&E's headquarters. As the pandemic took hold, A&E had to produce new content from previously aired material, as production was also locked down. Blackbird was tasked to interface with other existing storage and cloud systems, containing all the high bitrate live and file content, which totaled nearly 20,000 hours, along with its metadata. The real science begins when all video, audio, and data is rapidly transcoded to the patented Blackbird video codec. At this moment, Blackbird's lightweight, high-quality, proprietary video proxy of the original content is the only element required to be transported to Blackbird's private secure cloud. From that instant, the video and all associated assets are presented to the creatives, editors, and non-editors as consistently growing files.
Before we were even working remote due to COVID, we had started to dip our toes into the platform, and we realized how much easier it was to get access to all of our shows and movies using this platform. But it wasn't until COVID hit that forced us to rethink our workflow, rethink how we would access these things without being in the office. And we really depended on Blackbird to be there for us.
Before Blackbird, we were sending a large amount of final delivery content to an outside editor to make scene lists, correct the spec outputs, and add bugs and end cards for us. Now, we do all of that work ourselves inside the Blackbird interface directly from A+E's cloud archive.
Blackbird was conceived around the concepts of resilience and freedom for everyone, including creatives and technical people. This state-of-the-art technology has enabled A+E Networks to lead the industry during one of the most challenging periods in history. What I'd like to do is begin by introducing or having the A&E team leads introduce themselves. And we'll begin with Ed. And Ed, if you can give us a little bit of an introduction of yourself, that would be great.
Hey, Jeff, thanks. First of all, I'll give you a little intro to A&E, who we are, what we do. A&E is a multi-network, multi-genre content company. Comprised of some popular and cultural relevant brands, including A&E, History, Lifetime, LMN, Vice, FYI, Biography. We're in 7 out of 10 American homes, and we reach nearly 40 million people in over 200 territories and 41 languages. As for me, so I run a department. My department is called Production Operations within A&E. And our department is really responsible for creative, technical, operational, implementation, oversight, management of all the various production and post-production tools and resources and solutions and people and workflows and equipment that support all the various A&E content creation groups and initiatives across the company and in various locations across the world.
Wonderful. And Kevin?
Yep, Kevin Tobin, Senior Director, Strategic Projects. The strategy team assesses existing processes and technologies with the goal of assuming our clients, usually creatives and technical operations support teams, are functioning as efficiently as possible. When there is an opportunity to modernize or update systems and workflows, this team partner up with the internal A&E engineering department and vendors like Blackbird to run an exhaustive proof of concept process, and hopefully leads to a deployment. Since Ed instituted this team several years back, we've had a pretty good track record with only about 2 or 3 systems not making the cut, but ultimately being won out by another solution. Blackbird, since its deployment, has been outperforming and continues to impress our creative teams. We have flipped the script when introducing our users, new users to our group, and we say them, instead of just showing them what a system like Blackbird could do, we ask them, what problem do you need solved? And this has really yielded the best results so far.
Thanks, Kevin. And Cassie, a little intro on yourself.
Hi guys, I'm Cassie Pasinka. I am a new media asset specialist at A&E, and I work very closely with Kevin to kind of work closely with clients, with creatives to figure out what they need for their workflows and really streamline those processes. So before COVID, I was doing a lot of hard drive work, shoot work, kind of working really with physical media. And now since COVID, we've been really focusing on really streamlining those workflows and looking at them with a magnifying glass to see where can we improve, where can we pick this up so it's a little more streamlined and easy, not cut corners, but cross bridges or connect bridges to different programs. So that's kind of a lot where we're coming from, just figuring out ways to really get content in the hands of our creators so they have an easier time working from home.
Excellent. And Ed, just talking a little bit, I kind of dive in more into the departmental layout and the use of video within the departments. If you can kind of dive a little bit deeper into that, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely, Jeff. So we're a typical cable broadcast network. We've got various departments that touch video in many, many ways. Programming, marketing, digital, ad sales, social, distribution. They all have their different workflows, their different ways to produce, edit, and deliver content. And everything from long form programming to, short form, 2-3 minute pieces to 30-second promos to social GIFs, you name it. And my department supports all of those groups and really governs the whole media supply chain, all the way from, starting with ingest through edit, all the way through archive for all those created assets.
And Kevin, just a question about kind of the onboarding, the initial onboarding of Blackbird and A+E. What was the launch like? What was the user base like? Give us a little bit of that scope and that landscape of how that was achieved.
It was slow. We did the exhaustive POC of Blackbird in Q4 of 2018, shortly after I started with the company. And it's another gray screen editor, and most people don't like change. So we had a very specific need. Snappy TV, which was a Twitter tool for our social team, was being end of life, so we needed a Snappy TV replacement. Mm-hmm. All right, so that was fantastic. That easy peasy. Then we said, hey, this could also be a great producer's tool, right? Give them access to the Avid media within our system. That was kind of a slow uptake, so we're working out our way through it, doing lots of trainings for the first 12 months. And then we started to notice that a lot of our deployments were in non-broadcast clients, PR and other social groups. And we think social, Facebook and Instagram and the such, but this is more like PR, where we would send finished assets to other outlets, and PR taking creating electronic press kits and sending broadcast versions of scene lifts, things we never really thought of. And then we started to find a need to not necessarily have people in Blackbird, but have a way for them to view the content in, say, like a project management software, or we use Airtable, and you'll see some of that in a bit. And Monday.com kind of coined my new favorite phrase, which is work OS. So having a way to integrate video into a system, so people that are not as savvy with an editor interface is phenomenal. And then come January 2020, COVID-19 became real fast.
So Ed, what happened? So what happened next? Like, what changed after COVID hit?
Yeah, well, sort of everything changed, right? Like the video depicts, the pandemic hit, and we were literally, like everyone else, forced within days to get out of our tried and true, brick and mortar, on-prem facility, and where our assets live and where our storage lives. And okay, well, we can't stop creating assets, right? We can't stop making promos. We can't stop getting shows on the air. We can't stop making short form content for digital and broadcast and everything else. So what do? How do we get our, our production teams, our producers, our editors, all of our storytellers to keep working, right? They still needed to view screen and however we can figure out ways to make new content, right? To kind of make A&E relevant when, the whole production world was being shut down. So how do we stay relevant? How do we continue our ratings? How can we put something new on the air that people would be interested in watching? So we already had a good number of long form assets living in the cloud, right? But mostly for archival purposes or for distribution purposes, not really for active production purposes, right? So which really means no real way to screen it, view it, or do anything else with it from a production workflow standpoint. So our thoughts turned immediately to Blackbird. We already had, as we already talked about, we already had Ed servers on the ground. So we added some Ed service to the cloud in order to index these existing long form assets. And the editors and producers were up and rolling, pretty quickly once we were able to initiate those cloud Ed servers. And the first thing we did was we started enhancing long form linear content by adding some never before seen short form to it, right? Which created a new show for linear, right? So an hour show became an hour and 15-minute show because you added 2 segments of short form, or a 30-minute show became a 45-minute show because you added a couple of short form pieces. So that's how we got sort of new linear content on the air and started getting new eyeballs and some ratings accordingly.
So this is a really interesting conversation because next, the person whose lap this really does fall on is Cassie, because now that you've extended the cloud, there's going to be 2 things that are going to happen. You're going to have a technical infrastructure scale, and then we'll say equally or more important is a human infrastructure scale where you're going to have to scale a lot more people that are absolutely forced to work at home as the video depicts. So tell us a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, so I mean, the thing with Blackbird is that most people that are on it are not like your really really experienced Avid editors. Like those people are on their Avids. These are people in Blackbird who are creatives. They're people who need to screen the media, do rough cuts, or like social teams who are all, of course, a super creative bunch, or like the press teams who also are definitely not editors. So we get all these people who need to access the media because, again, they're used to working in the office, handing hard drives back and forth, hoarding assets like on drives, putting them into their Macs and kind of going on with their day. So now, since FedEx takes a lot longer than what they're used to for getting drives plugged into their computers, they're like, what do we do next? How do we access this media? We're talking about like files, like one file that's like over 100 gigs that they have no way to get down to their computers. And all they need, like a really classic example is like the social team literally needs to make a GIF off of a 100 gig file. We don't want to have to give them 100 gigs, especially to their home computer. They need not even a video file, like a few frames of that file, but they need to screen the whole thing, right? So Blackbird, in the technological sense, was easy to kick off because we were already ingesting with it. So really, we just pointed it to a new cloud location, and then training started. The social team was already in Blackbird, so they picked it up really fast. But the second the rest of those types of creatives caught wind that they could access this archive location on Blackbird, we started getting influx of people. So training started. Blackbird is a new editor, so people are kind of like, that's not Premiere, what am I looking at? Of course, with anything new that someone has to learn. But Blackbird works in a unique way that is user-friendly, so people do learn it quickly once they're in it. And we're doing a lot of just like team video screen sharing trainings with groups of people. And honestly, that worked extremely well. And if I were honest, a little better than in-person trainings, just because I think it's on their screen rather than like on a projector. So I preferred it. I thought it went very well. And it was a very smooth transition from kind of the in-office Blackbird training to this new giant group of people and doing kind of online video chat training.
Great. Just before we get, now we're going to kind of move towards some of the technology. I do want to put a reminder out there that we do have a Q&A section where if you add questions, we will address all the questions at the end of the video, or at the end of the webinar, if you will. So Cassie, with that, let's start from the beginning, input and ingest, and let's discuss, certainly as we discussed the Edge software, the Blackbird Edge software, and the connections and the services that you run around it. So that's kind of a, that's the beginning, that's the foundation of Blackbird. So let's talk a little bit about that.
So yeah, so this is just a little image of kind of our ingests. These are kind of the big four. We have a lot of ingests going on, but these are the big four like locations that they're coming in from. Our first one up here is our newest and fantastic addition to Blackbird, which is LucidLink. LucidLink is a cloud location that mounts to your computer and you can edit off of it, which is great with people with good internet capabilities, but not great for people who do not, which is kind of where Blackbird comes in. A lot of stuff coming in from Lucid is a lot of Premiere projects, because Premiere people work off of LucidLink the most. So we have that media coming in through LucidLink. And the other is graphics. We get a ton of graphics coming in because our graphics team actually, when COVID hit, started working almost exclusively off LucidLink. So now we have our graphics coming in automatically, which all those different file types work great with Blackbird. We have the PNG files. We have alpha channels that come in. We'll show you those in the edit. Those come in perfectly to be used with Blackbird. We're going to talk a lot about this AWS next, so I'm going to skip it for now. On the ground, down here in the grass, we have Avid media files. So we work with Avid interplay projects. So Avid media file projects come also into Blackbird. I think Kevin mentioned it. That was one of our first kind of workflows, was getting that Avid media in. And then actually even earlier than that was our live stream. So we also have our HLS live stream coming from the ground.
Beautiful. Excellent.
So yeah, so we're going to talk about the cloud, the AWS
Okay.
cloud. So this is what we keep talking about, what Ed was talking about. This is where all our final assets are going before Blackbird. This is like happening anyway. So these are final assets being pushed to an archive that if Blackbird didn't exist would still be happening, which is kind of what we try to do with Blackbird, is sit on top of already creating workflows. So we're not bringing it or moving media just for Blackbird, which is one of the great parts of it. So yeah, so these are some files that are living in the cloud. You can see like 175 gigs, giant files. If I were to download this, not only would I be charged egress, but I would be using all my bandwidth for a few hours or more, depending. So this is kind of just a bucket of files.
And Cass, and that's if you chose the right one.
Yeah, exactly.
the file name.
Right, because you can't screen it. You're not going to screen this, so you don't really know the content of it. So if you were looking for something really specific and you weren't sure which episode it's in, that's a whole other thing. Like I can't look at multiple things at once. You just have to like hope for the best. So yeah, this is kind of our naming convention. It's brand, lifetime, movie, move, PID, which is its unique ID, core file, frame rate, date, and version. So these names are kind of not very specific to the naked eye, but it's a specific name for A&E in the cloud archive.
Mm-hmm.
So just to show you, these are our Edge servers. We have 6 of them on the ground, and then 3 of them in the cloud. So we have these 2 for kind of our big giant archive buckets, and this one for Lucid. I would not be surprised if the scales tip soon and we have more cloud than local. But right now, this is kind of our layout. So we have all of these servers running and ingesting stuff all day. So,
and to be fair, this is how the Edge looks to the system. There's hardware and software, right? So this is, you don't have to go in VNC into a server to see what's happening. This gives you, it's a nice dashboard the little pie charts give you a nice visual of what's happening in, as your content is coming into the system.
Just to even look at it a little closer, this is our library. So this is where all of our final assets go into. And Jeff, do you want to talk a little bit about?
Yeah, the library is really an interesting concept because first of all, each Blackbird editor has the library. It's basically the foundation of, I'm guessing, all of your content that is sitting in the cloud. Now, what's really interesting is the library is a read-only location, and what this means is obviously you can't delete from it. But you can certainly access it, and it gives everyone ubiquitous access and mass amounts of scale. Now, this view that you see over here is very much like the one you saw on the website. It's essentially the Blackbird player, but I'll let Cassie explain her use of what we look at as the media asset portal inside Blackbird.
Right, yeah, so this is kind of your control center of Blackbird. So this is definitely a more admin side view into the media, which we will also look at in the editor, which kind of is that user view. But as you can see here, we have it coming into the library organized by kind of the brand, and then these are short codes or show codes. So that's all happening automatically by like a Python code expression on ingest. So rather than this being organized manually, we can actually access and use all metadata from any clip and utilize that information to organize it however we want, which is fantastic because we're spinning up projects all the time. Everyone wants things organized differently. All projects are unique. So we're able to use kind of those expressions and that kind of customizable ingest to organize based off project, which has been fantastic for our users.
Excellent.
Yeah, these are like hours of footage. These come in all day automatically into the system. And then our users basically get those episodes. So even if they're new episodes and they're dropped, they receive them soon after they're put into the archive, and they're able to pull scenes and edit with them.
The irony here is that we're using the Blackbird library feature to literally index our library. From what the numbers that have been thrown around over the last year is it's 40,000 hours of content. And I believe the word from our partners is in September, their uploading of all that content will be complete for all English language content. So we're right behind them. So as they put it in, we're putting it into Blackbird.
It's interesting, the avalanche of content, as we like to describe it, and we certainly can see that avalanche coming in. There's two things that Cassie pointed out. It's the lack of human intervention to organize it, number one, that we do give tools to the back end and allowing our customers to script how it's presented, number one, and how the metadata is injected into the files themselves, number two. So that's really great. So we have this ingest process. And I guess what happens next is what I will describe as the ooey gooey wonderfulness of the Blackbird editor and all the associated tools of the editor. And Cassie's become an expert on the Blackbird editor. And I'm going to let her take it away on this. So
yeah, so this is the editor, pretty classic gray screen, like every other editor. It does work a little differently. One of the bigger differences is that there's no like file edit drop-down menu up top. We basically have just this sidebar here for our kind of toolbar-esque thing. First things first, this is kind of the files window. This is important because this is unique to the project. So like if I spin up another project, if I have a project specifically for a show, I can have media come in just to that project and only people in that project can see it. Because again, with Blackbird, each project has users inside of it, and then it's a completely collaborative like editing project for everyone that's signed into that project. So this files window right here is specifically for that project versus the library, which is this little book icon over here, which is available to every account. So whenever you click on this book button, if you're in an A&E project, you will see kind of this archive here. So then we have our classic buttons. Anything colored is actually a publish button, which means we're sending stuff out of Blackbird or creating media or data files, that kind of stuff. And the rest are just kind of management type things. We have the classics, we have the source window, we have the editor window. And then down here, we could call a timeline, but it is a lot more than that in Blackbird. It's kind of where you do all of your work. We have three major views. We have a storyboard, which is fantastic for people who are not an editor and they just kind of want to choose selects and label things. We have log, which is like doing logs, transcriptions, captions, kind of that paper cut-esque view of the system. And then your classic edit, your classic timeline is also available here. So yeah, that's kind of the layer of the system.
So let's see some pictures.
Awesome. So yeah, so coming in here, I have a very fun, exciting 3-camera multicam synced interview with transcriptions along with it, which is fantastic for more of our long form type projects. We're using a lot of these for people to screen and look at interviews. These are synced. They can be synced in Blackbird with, oh, go ahead, Jeff. I see your hand.
No, that wasn't my hand. Sorry. I was sorry about that.
It was, no, I'm just kidding.
It was.
So yeah, this is synced by time code with like 4 clicks. Like, so you can sync this in Blackbird by time code with like minimal work. Or if you're doing grouped in syncs in Avid anyway for your project, you can also send those right over with an AAF and they link right up. So you don't have to do double work. So that has been great for us as well, depending on how people kind of want to do their workflows.
Right. And so the sync relationships are established here, which is great, in that you can see everything in context, which is great. And the windows are synced together. So it's kind of a push me, pull you situation where if you do something on one window, I can see it happening live right now, that the transcriptions are rolling along as the video is playing. And I'm guessing it happens in a reverse mode as well. Inverse mode, if you will.
It does.
Yeah.
This has been awesome. I mean, a lot of the times people are kind of, these transcriptions come in and they're basically kind of replacing that paper cut and like screening tool of just like screeners that get uploaded to whatever platform, because it's very flexible in this way. Mm-hmm. Also, the search function for these logs have been godsend. So people can kind of just type in any word and you'll get all your hits right up and jump to those moments. Also, what's cool about this search feature is it doesn't only have to happen in this interface. You can actually search entire folders of like 12 interviews if you're looking for like one piece and you're not sure where it is. So instead of screening 11 interviews, you can actually just search through all their transcripts and really jump right to that point.
That's very cool. So now what happens next? So now we have the transcripts, we have the content, but what happens next? So because it's more than just a screening device, I mean, you know, it is a full-on editor. So what would, let's say, a story editor or a story producer do, or a producer do as the next part of the process?
So the next part is definitely what people ask next every time is, okay, how do I pull selects and send them to my editor? So that is basically what we're going to do is we're going to create a string out, create a shot list, and then send that via AAF right to our editor. So we're not wasting any work in here. We can actually basically send all that stuff right over to our edit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just setting it in and out. I can choose my camera. I like this one for this shot. Pull it right over to my my edit, my record window, and then we're basically off and running. I could do that as much as I wanted, kind of push those over, choose another camera. And then what's really awesome about this, let's rename it my string out. Great. So now we've named it, and you can kind of see down here my string out. So what I can do is I can, this is the classic, this is the edit, right? So this kind of looks like you're a timeline, like an editor. I can even switch my camera around right from this view. But also, if you are working with a lot of creatives, not everyone loves having a timeline. So we also have this really awesome little storyboard mode, and you can just move these around, change their order however you want. And another really popular feature is if you see my cursor change into a little text, if you click in here, you can also kind of label or do a shot list of what these are. So I could be like opening, closing, funny moment, right?
Labeling makes it searchable, we know, which is great. And then really what happens next? Like if you have this content, does it propagate? What does it propagate to the next step in line? And where does that, and what happens at that point?
Yeah, so these shot lists actually relate to the source, not just what you're editing. So if you ever use that source again, this note will come along with it. So you're not wasting any time making these notes. They will be used throughout the entire use of the show and the project. And when you do bring this over via AAF into Avid, which you'll see, these little notes come in as markers. They also come in as subclips. So if your editor needs to reference them, they'll be right in the bin along with it.
Fabulous. Excellent. So what's next? So what's going to happen next?
So right now I'm pushing it over to my Avid AAF button, and we'll show you what that looks like when we get to some publishes. But honestly, this should be done any moment. It's a data file. It doesn't have any media associated with it. So it should complete almost immediately.
My turn to ask you a question, Cass. So you drag that sequence over to this output publish button. Where is that action happening?
So, right, what's very cool about all these publish buttons and makes our users very happy is that any publish button, whether it's high res or anything, is actually happening on our Blackbird servers, not on people's computers. So basically, even if I tried to export a giant movie that was huge, I could clamshell my laptop X out of everything. My computer could crash and it wouldn't matter because those processing is happening on the servers, not on your actual computer. Yeah, that's also a really great feature because people worry, what if my computer crashes? Doesn't matter.
I'm going to answer a couple of questions just as they're coming in, just because there are some interesting questions. We have a question of how many video tracks in the timeline and how many audio tracks per how many audios per video track can you manage? So the answer to that is 18 video tracks and 36 audio tracks where you can edit pan characteristics and level characteristics. You can actually see, this is some sources that actually on the screen have 12 video tracks, and we're going to get into that. I'll answer one more question and then we'll head on to the rest of the presentation. But can you restrict access to certain folders in the library for individual users, or do all users see all folders? We actually can restrict it based on role. So absolutely that is possible. So you can drill down into that. So people, it's not only to that content that's in the Blackbird editor can you restrict, but you can also restrict publishing as well. So only specific roles have access to publish and some don't as well. So it is very secure to do that type of thing where we can have individual control over content viewing and access versus content publishing as well. But let's continue on with the presentation. We'll answer some more questions soon.
Yeah, that feature, the role feature, has come in very handy for us. Not having to create separate instances for people in the same group but have different responsibilities, especially when it comes to social. Not everybody is allowed to publish straight to a social platform. So being able to have everybody work in the same interface and then have different rights was very helpful.
Great. So Cassie, what do we see here? I see video with lots of audio tracks.
Yes. Yeah. I pulled this up to kind of show audio tracks. These are all the audio tracks of the file. It's actually very interesting how we kind of deal with these audio tracks. And I'll talk about that when we do a high-res publish. Perfect. But what I basically want to talk about right now is kind of our screener link capability. So a really popular job that we do a lot is creating screeners of full movies, right? So a great thing that Blackbird does is it can create a screener link. But on top of that, a lot of the things we get are for people who are not tech people or editors, and they don't want the bars, tone, slate, any of that. They just want to see the full episode. But what we can do in here, right, in Blackbird is chop those off. So let's say right here. And just to point out kind of what Jeff was talking about earlier with this timeline, rather than watching the whole thing or knowing what time code the end comes up, I can see it from this crazy bird's eye view exactly where this episode ends, because it's this black moment right here in the video. So I don't actually have to screen things ever. It's very easy for me to help people out in this system because I don't really need to know the content because I get such a nice bird's eye view from here. So yeah, I create my out point. There we go. And I have my in point. And basically I'm just dragging it over to a screener link button. And this is kind of like the AAF. It should be done almost immediately. Actually, I meant to pick a thumbnail. So I can even pick a thumbnail by finding what I wanted. So like, let's say I wanted it to be this lovely woman, and I just drop that down and see now I have a thumbnail here, and you'll see that in the screener when I show it to you.
And to point out part of this publish, the reason it does happen so fast is that it is based on Blackbird video. It's creating a playlist. So there is zero render time. It could be a 4-hour sequence, and that is going to still take a split second to do a process for a screener.
Yeah, these are both already done, and they were 22 minutes long. That wasn't that long, but I mean, for an immediate screener, it's not too shabby. So yeah, so the other really huge thing, this is actually one of the biggest and first workflows, because you know what happened when COVID hit, we had these people who worked for press, and they literally didn't even have editors. They were like, what do we do? Do we download iMovie? I have no idea what to do. I don't even know how to get my content. And we pushed them to Blackbird, and they've been in there ever since, and they love it. So it was a fantastic solution for that team. What they're doing is they're doing a lot of scene lifts. So what I can actually do, just like the interview, we have captioning coming in here. So a lot of times they'll be like, hey, can you get this person saying this thing? And they can literally just come in here and search for it and get all their hits and just jump right to that moment in the interview with no heavy lifting. So they basically choose an in, they're doing a little edit, they choose their in, they choose their out of their episode. They just drag that scene lift over to their edit like we did before. My social clip. And what I'm going to do is jump over to my kind of edit window here. And then they add a graphic. So our graphics come in to the account. This is like a graphic with an alpha channel. So you're going to see right now, I just layer that over my clip. Let me just pull this up. See my little A&E in the corner. Perfect. I just stretch that over the whole thing. And then I'm going to come back and just add my end card, my Storage Wars graphic end card.
So that's really interesting. We actually do have another question that actually is kind of relevant to this as well. If you just jump back to the log view, there was a question about adding captions and closed captions. And as you can see here, we have all the closed captions, and to be very specific, those can be embedded. They can be ingested through a sidecar, and here you can see more of an embed, so they show up in the closed caption column. It becomes searchable. It's also displayable on the screen. So the question is, can you add captions to the content? And the answer is yes, closed captions or open captions through a composite layer as well. And I do notice on your edit side, you do have yes, full alpha channel support is available. And that's absolutely something that can happen in Blackbird. So great.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I actually see one more question, which is, are you able to edit based off Transcript? Which is a cool question because the answer to that is completely yes. This is actually a really cool feature that we use a lot. What you can do is like, I pressed bark. I got a couple hits for that. Say I wanted a string out of just the word bark. I can actually highlight all of these hits, drag them to any open spot in Blackbird, and now I have a string out of every time they said bark. So if you're ever trying to do kind of like one of those fun little like word hits, and they just, every time they say that word, you can do that. I just did it almost immediately. So that's also a really cool feature that they're using.
Perfect. So what we've seen so far, we've seen the ingest, we've seen the edit, and of course the edit does go much, much further. But now let's talk about distribution points and delivery of content. And you have some pretty unique integrations that you've designed here, and we're all kind of waiting with bated breath to see some of this stuff as well. So take it away.
Sure. Yeah. So the first thing I showed you guys was the screener link, right? Which you can also just kind of open this bucket, double click, and it will open that screener link that we've been kind of seeing everywhere, like Jeff showed in the very beginning. But something we utilize a lot in A&E is them automatically going to Airtable and really giving us a nice little layout of screeners. So like if I come to my Airtable, this is what it is. Basically, the Blackbird publish sends that kind of screener URL through an automated process and just pushes it right to Airtable. So if someone's not in the system, someone wants an easy way to view a bunch of Blackbird screeners, this has been fantastic. For review and approval, that's one of the huge reasons for this, because basically we can load up this Airtable with screeners. Airtable is kind of like a tracking system. It kind of looks like Excel. That's like the vibe of it. But of course, it has all these fun views. But you can come in here, view screeners, tag someone, change its status to approved, all that fun stuff. So this really helps us kind of manage the media and use it to the best of our ability. So you get your thumbnail automatically coming in, your file name. This is the thumbnail we chose. Then I can click on this button, and now I have my Blackbird screener.
Back to that magic of the Blackbird Codec, available in any web browser as a screening device. Absolutely fabulous.
Really big point of this screener that's been huge is the ability to change the time code from record to source.
Oh, very
so
cool.
Your users can always reference the source time code when working with Blackbird screeners.
That's pretty unique for a player to actually be able to see all the associated timing metadata of the incoming source of almost like an EDL, if you will. So that's fabulous.
So that's our screener. I also wanted to show you guys the AAF that we just created. So this is actually a remote, not my Mac anymore. I'm remoting into a computer in New York, which where I am not currently. But I can open up my AAF button. I'm going to download this string out we created together. It's right here. Again, there's no media associated with this AAF, so we don't have to worry about download times. I immediately have it. It's right here. I'm just going to open up my bin. Here we go. Drag my AAF in. And there we go. Everything's linked up. Everything's here. Here is my grouped clip. There it is right there. Beautiful. These are the sub clips of the kind of selects we made. So this is the opening one, the closing one, and the funny moment. So your editor can just access these immediately. And last but not least, we have the full string out that we created in Blackbird, available in Avid for your editor.
All metadata is propagated to the next point in line. And I just did want to point out that we are going to put up a poll probably right now, but we are going to continue on with the presentation. Take us through the final type of publish that you're doing on a regular basis.
Yes, this is the last one. It's super quick. That high res button that we did actually pushes to an A&E managed FTP, which is fantastic because we can track the users that access it, the people who download it, but it's also available to a lot of people. We use this for kind of media management. So this is my social clip, the one we just did. I'm just going to download it right here. It's already finished. So this is already processed. This was not staged or anything. This was completely in front of you, made right now. Already finished downloading. I can open it up. It's right here in full high res with our bug in the corner and our end card at the end. So we've completely avoided transferring a 100 gig final asset, and we're able to deliver them a file that's under a gig, but completely social spec. We're also dealing with broadcast spec DNX HD. So we deal with higher too, but it's all the same. And it's really streamlined the process considerably.
Absolutely fabulous. So with that, what I'd like to do is, and I think we all have access to the QA sections. Let's go through some of the QAs here.
I see one is asking about projects.
Yeah, go for it.
A lot of it is, he's talking about, how about if I read it? How do you manage your individuals' projects? Can you go over that again? Well, it's different for different projects. So Cassie's showing you a lot of the automation, whether it's stripping text out of file names, which is, handled on the Edge server. We had to go to, Avid creates a lot of files. So we had to find a way to organize Blackbird's version of the Avid media similar to the Avid side. So with the help of Blackbird and Markworth Broadcast, we have their interplay connector. It's called IMET. So we're able to take the bin information directly from Avid, put it into Blackbird as strictly metadata, and organize those Avid projects to duplicate. So both edit interfaces look very similar, because you do a pre-compute and you make a little 2-second 10 frame file. Nobody wants to shuffle through that stuff, so we did it on master clips. So we were able to present to the producers the master clips that are actively being used in the Avid interplay environment directly into the Blackbird environment.
Perfect.
That was a big win.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that type of integration does really solidify the handshake between the applications. There's a question about the editor. Does it have effects, transitions, audio fades, ripple edit tools? So let me describe that, something so near and dear to my heart. Yes, the answer is yes. Dissolves, wipes, fades, layers, picture-in-picture effects, and things like that. But then the question that came up is the ripple edit tool. The ripple, the editor itself is based on standard editing practices. So the ones that all editors have grown up with, splice, insert, overwrite, replace, ripple, ripple delete or extract, slip. All of that exists inside Blackbird. What Blackbird did not do, and I will be very clear, we did not try to redesign the metaphor of a non-destructive editor. What we did is we made it so that the muscle memory is there, so you can begin on one editor and continue on Blackbird. The goal was that you shouldn't have had to learn a new editor. You just have to work it in a web browser. So we kept that muscle memory and the standards as part of the editor. We did invent new features, but that's something completely different. But in terms of editing metaphors, that's absolutely something that we've maintained, that is available to everyone.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to note on that the keyboards in Blackbird are huge for anyone using Blackbird that is already an editor. You can change your keyboard to an Avid keyboard or Premiere keyboard. I think Final Cut is still on there, if I'm not mistaken, which has been huge, because then all those same shortcuts you're used to on your keyboard can then be used in Avid, even if maybe the button for that specific move isn't exactly right in front of your face. You can still use all the same keyboard shortcuts.
Absolutely. Go for it. Sorry.
I was going to say that will make Lara happy. She was asking, can Blackbird also talk to Final Cut? And you're welcome for the presentation.
Yeah, you can definitely do a Final Cut keyboard, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and you could actually do a Final Cut XML as well. So if you want to deliver that, you can actually do a Final Cut XML at a Blackbird. So
yeah, we focus primarily on Avid today. I know there's a couple of questions about Premiere and Final Cut. Yes, we have workflows with them too. We just had to pick one. We only have a limited amount of time. But yes, we do lots of integration with all the edit platforms.
Someone's asking about Arabic script, basically multi-language. Yes, and we actually do support that. So you can actually, we have a customer or multiple customers actually that require Arabic keyboards, Arabic typing on the screen, and absolutely you can do it. You just simply change your keyboard format and there you have it. I've tried to type it, but what I type never seems to work out right. So, but absolutely though, we can do that. Let's see what else we have here.
You can also have multiple caption tracks.
Yeah, up to 4, so that if you do have multiple languages, you can do that. We are getting a lot of Premiere, Avid Premiere questions in terms of, again, back the editorial equivalency, and that I cannot say enough that the equivalency between and Kevin actually coined the phrase, and I will completely thank him for saying it, but we call it a gray screen editor, right? And that's kind of our first introduction that we started discussing. And he said, yeah, well, it is a gray screen editor because there's a lot of them out there. And this one just happens to be fabulous in the cloud without the overhead, right? So that's really what this is all about.
And I don't know how much time we have, but James Nolan was asking about the Blackbird performance. Does Blackbird perform the transcription? Yes and no. You could do a manual transcription where you could, type while it's while the video is playing, like a regular transcription service would do. The stuff you saw actually came from an outside service because our client does that straight from their audio files from location, and so we import it as a CSV. And again, I don't know if we have time, and Cassie, if you could go quick to a transcription. Sometimes, those automated AI transcriptions make large paragraphs. We could go into Blackbird and chop those up to make them smaller, because sometimes the AI doesn't get that you've changed topic, or another speaker has spoken, so it just creates a very large block, which at that point you might as well not even have the transcription. So we do AI external transcription, import it into Blackbird, and then the client themselves will do a cleanup inside Blackbird.
Yeah, which works really well because, since again, like, Blackbird projects are shared by all the users in it. When anyone does any sort of editing in the transcript, it goes to every account.
And then we could export it as a paper cut and a new transcription.
Right. So again, of course, we have people who are like, please, paper cut. I need my Word document, which Blackbird can completely do totally easily. So if they still want those paper cuts in their Word document of transcriptions, that user can easily export it themselves without any extra help.
Somebody's asking about, the question is specifically this: there are multiple remote production software packages on the market. Can you point out some of the key features that made you select Blackbird? And I think we've really answered that quite a bit. And other simpler applications into the integration of your infrastructure, or is it partly a commercial aspect also?
Sorry to interrupt you. I'd like to answer
that go for it.
About replacing Avid and Premier seats.
Sure,
I think that's an important question.
Yeah,
Look, I think the short answer to that question is, in some cases, yes. And I would say for the sort of lower level creative work, but my expanded answer would be, it's expanded our abilities for more groups to create their own content, where you don't have to rely on an experienced editor, as in a person, right, to do that work for you. But now with some training, you can take this, gray platformed editor and learn it yourself to be able to create more content, right? So it's more about expanding on what we have rather than replacing the tools that we currently have. So more groups can create their own content.
Great. I think someone else asked, does it replace Premiere and Avid seats? And I think one of the answers for that is our press team. If Blackbird wasn't the solution, we would have had to find Premiere seats for them and somehow delivered them media. But they didn't have to learn Premiere. We were able to just give them a username and a Blackbird, and they really took off running. And it's easier for them to receive media that way anyway. And also a lot of the not like Avid editor seats replacing, but Avid screening stations replacing, we're able to get people screening inside of Blackbird rather than taking up an editor seat for that workflow.
Okay. I think, is there any more questions? There is a question about pricing structure, and I will absolutely direct you to, and I will put up a slide at the end, to commercial.blackbird.video. Because I'm so close to the R&D department, and the commercial people could absolutely help you out with that. So I just wanted to point that out as well. I just want to thank everyone from A&E. You guys have been fabulous. I can't say enough how much we do appreciate you being on this webinar. You guys were total stars on this webinar. We really, really appreciate it. If there are any other questions, you certainly can address them to commercial.blackbird.video. I will put the screen up. Thank you so much for joining today, and everybody have a wonderful day. Thanks so much.